Welcome to the Elixir Kitchen, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeremy Capone. I am the wellness chef.
And I'm Stephanie Gladman, the registered dietitian.
And today we're celebrating Men's Health Month. June is Men's Health Awareness Month. So we're going to be touching on that. And I mean, this is the first day of summer. This is June 21st. So I think no better time than to talk about barbecuing as well and some of the healthy approaches and some recipes and tips on how we can tackle that part of our cooking game.
Yeah. So often we get lots of questions about whether barbecue and grilling is safe. So if done right, definitely it is. And like Jeremy said, we're going to walk through some of those examples and some tips. Really focusing on marinating foods. So specifically the meat, poultry, and fish. Choosing leaner cuts of meat, poultry, and fish, and to steer clear of the direct flame, and then also choosing meatless options, so barbecuing things like fruit, vegetables, and even veggie burgers.
Yeah.
So I just want to get started and kind of talk a little bit about the link between grilling and cancer risk. So at the moment, there really is no specific scientific evidence to showcase that grilling meat specifically will increase cancer risk. But what we do know is that there are two cancer-causing chemicals that are formed when meat, poultry, and fish are grilled at very high temperatures. And these carcinogens, so they're both, these two potential causing compounds are carcinogens, and that might damage or affect DNA, which can lead to cancer. So again, there are some tips, and it is a healthy way when done right. So we're going to walk through those three recipes and showcase things that you can do to help make sure that you're grilling safely. So the first one.
Oh, we're ready. Let's
do it.
Right. So so the first one, thank you, Stephanie. We're going to do some grilling. Now, we are inside. Obviously, we do not have a barbecue, so you have to go with me there. We have to imagine that we're outside, we're barbecuing. I have two grill pans. So some of the tips that we talk about will still apply even if you're in the kitchen, you're not outside, you're not working with direct flame. So definitely keep that in mind, and we can probably point you to which one's probably more specific when we talk to flame. So we're doing an eggplant dish where we have a little bit of steak on here as well. And I think the first thing that we're going to do, Stephanie mentioned, is marinating.
Yeah, so you want to do a marinade specifically, so not necessarily a barbecue sauce marinade, but I'm talking more an antioxidant rich mix that focuses on citrus fruits, so fresh orange, lemon, lime juices, and marinating whatever you have, so a meat, poultry, or fish, for at least 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're using lemon juice, but we're using the entire lemon. So what I'm going to start off with is the zest that's on the outside. So these little fine graters are fantastic for removing zest.
And this, specifically the juice, so the high antioxidants, that can actually help prevent, so if you're marinating the meat, poultry, or fish for at least 30 minutes, this kind of coats the food and prevents these cancer-causing chemicals to form when you're putting it on the grill at high heat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the lemon juice here. You can also use lime juice, you can use orange juice. Vinegars work really well, so like red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar. Now, the thing that you do want to keep in mind, it is protective for grilling, but acid does also start to cook your food. So you don't want to you wouldn't want to, especially for poultry or beef, you wouldn't want to leave it any longer than 30 minutes. So Stephanie mentioned the 30-minute rule is pretty good. I would say with beef, you can probably go a little higher. You can probably go an hour, 2 hours, but any longer than that, and the acids will actually start to cook the outside. With fish, it happens even quicker. So with fish, just keep an eye on it. Do a little less, or you can add a little bit of a little bit more olive oil to it just to balance it out, but direct acidity. You don't want to leave on too long.
Yeah.
So we have lemon juice, we have lemon zest, very citrusy here. We're going to add some garlic as well and go right back to the rasp. You can smell the lemon? Yes.
Yeah.
It's like we're all marinating together in this. So garlic, I'll add maybe a clove and a half to this. And we're thinking about flavor as well, right? The protective nature of the marinade, but absolutely flavor is important. That's why we're cooking in the first place, right? Any spice that you want. So ground cumin is fantastic. Smoked paprika. I'm using ras el hanout, which is like a North African spice, which has cumin and coriander, just lots of cinnamon, lots of, not cilantro. Coriander doesn't taste the same, so if you don't like cilantro, give this one a shot. It's really nice. But you can add whatever you want in terms of a spice. So we'll mix that up, so the lemon juice, the garlic.
And you know, if you don't necessarily like those spices, there's so many others to use.
Yeah,
so we're
absolutely.
kind of just giving a framework of, you know, amounts of the citrus juice plus, you know, some aromatics and different spices.
Yeah, and a little bit of olive oil, and just a little pinch of salt. Just a little bit, just to enhance some of the flavors. You can always season a little bit afterwards. It's very hard to take it off if you over-season your marinade. And that's pretty much it. That's how easy it is. All right, so we've already marinated ours ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I have it on the grill.
Yeah. And we're showcasing red meats, right? And specifically for cancer survivors, cancer prevention, we're talking about, you know, meats, so that could be pork, steak, beef. You do want to make sure that you're limiting the amount that you're having per week to no more than 18 ounces, which is about 500 grams a week. Okay, so I have my handy deck of cards here, and that's about 75 grams. So just to give you kind of a visual, it's a little bit bigger than my palm of your hand. You're more than welcome to come out and kind of test what your palm looks like. But about 75 grams would be about 6 times a week, right? But you have to kind of think of how much are you having in one sitting. So again, that's no more than 18 ounces a week of red meat. So that's including things like pork, steak, beef, hamburgers, lamb, okay? And then often we talk about, you know, going to a barbecue and maybe there's some processed meat like salami or hot dogs, which you might, the recommendation is to limit or avoid, okay? So I always say save it for a special occasion. Yeah.
So what we're doing here too, and I think, you know, instead of focusing on, because we don't want to say it's summertime, we don't want to say, you know, you cut out red meat altogether. I think a lot of people are afraid. With us, we're just limiting the portion. I think that's really a frame of a mind you can get around and try to bulk up the extra with something else, right? So we have flank steak. We're using flank steak. We're going to be thinly slicing that, and that's going to be for serving of 4 people. So it's a smaller portion, but then we're bumping it up with some eggplant and some other ingredients to sort of make up for that. So we're using flank steak. We're grilling it about 3 to 4 minutes per side. The most important thing, cooking any meat, this is a must-have, especially if you're cooking outside, especially if you're a beginner cook. Use a food thermometer to gauge the internal temperature, and you want to make sure that you are cooking it to a very safe internal temperature. We've actually included from Health Canada a chart right on the back page, and it lists the internal temperature, the safe internal temperatures for many of the proteins that you might be grilling or cooking on there. And for beef, you'll notice at least 145 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 63 Celsius, and that's at a medium rare. And then if you want it more than that, then absolutely you can cook it up to more than that, but at least for beef, minimum there. And then for poultry, it's obviously you want it well done, so you're looking at 165, and then so on, depending on if it's fish or if it's a whole bird, there's different temperatures. So try to use that guide, use a food thermometer, be safe. You may have seen the thumb and finger technique, and oh yeah, this is a medium rare. like honestly, everyone has different hands, everyone has different muscles. That's a very general gauge, but you want to be precise. So food thermometer, make sure it's cooked to at least 145 for beef. Which brings me to our next point, heat. Controlling heat is very, very important. Like Stephanie mentioned, we want to avoid direct contact with flame because that is when sort of get into the cancer-causing carcinogens, those chemicals. Now we don't have flame here. We're just using cast iron pan. So still, I don't want to char the outside. So I'm using sort of a medium heat and just gauging it. A little bit of color is okay, but you want to avoid any dark, really dark burning. And then on a barbecue, that's when you're dealing with flame, right? So any fat that drips off.
Right. So choosing those leaner cuts, so like a lean flank steak, or removing the skin on a chicken breast. So choosing extra lean ground beef, so for hamburgers, because it's the fat that when it's in contact with that direct flame, it causes those cancer-causing chemicals that are left on the food. So like Jeremy said, kind of using tips to, we talked about the marinade, so that's protecting it, but again, a lower fat food will decrease that amount, and then not having that direct contact with the flame, or at least for a short, lessening the amount of time.
Right. So a few things. Don't leave the barbecue unattended. If you have meat on there, stay there. It is very easy to start kicking up flames pretty quickly. The second thing is set up a hot spot and a cool spot. If you have gas barbecue or propane barbecue, you can usually just dial off one side and have your heat on one side. That way you can start it off on the hotter side for a shorter amount of time, and then you move it over to the cool side and close the lid. This is creating indirect heat, and so it's still cooking the meat, but you're not fearful of a direct flame because it's a cold spot. You can, if you're doing charcoal, you can do the same thing. You just sort of push everything over to one side and have a cool spot on the other side.
And I'll take them with rice.
That's with any meat. Yeah, anything that's going to be dripping a lot of fat, the fat, as soon as it hits a flame, is when it kicks it up. So if it's on a cold side, you're not worried about it dripping into the flames. The third thing, and especially if you're around the barbecue, this is one thing that I picked up off of someone, is have a spray bottle handy with simply water. And anytime flames kick up, the pink stuff. Someone thought it was rosé. You can use rosé. It's just water. So the point is the water itself, the cold water will actually kill the flames, right? You can sort of control the flame just spraying it on top. But if you season the water, now we're doing two things. We're controlling the flame and we're seasoning the meat, right?
Yes.
So water, and this is red wine vinegar,
Okay.
and some herbs.
Nice.
You can add lemon juice. You can season anything. You can season yourself, whatever you want.
It's too hot.
It's too hot, yeah.
Even if you're grilling vegetables, you've got that.
Anything, exactly, yeah. It's a nice way to sort of keep it moist because vegetables can dry out pretty fast too, but also a good way to kick down the heat.
Yeah.
So flame control, heat control, marinades, we're all on the same page?
Yeah.
Any questions so far? Awesome.
Great.
Okay, we're gonna get to finishing the recipe now. So steak is right where I want it. So I've turned off the heat. I'm just letting it rest for about 5 minutes. Eggplant. We love grilling eggplant.
Or any type of vegetable.
Yes.
Yeah. So going meatless, so kind of using those vegetables, fruit. The barbecuing these types of foods actually doesn't cause the cancer causing compounds to form, right? So they're less. So you don't have to worry. I mean, you don't want to eat charred food in general, but it's not something that you need to be as cautious about as opposed to things like meat, poultry, and fish. Okay, so grilling vegetables, fruit, bean burgers, this is encouraged. And we also know that having more of that plant-based diet is a recommendation for prevention and cancer survivors.
Absolutely, yeah. So don't be afraid to get some color. With the eggplant, what we're doing is we're charring the outside, almost like you would with roasted peppers. It takes a little bit longer, especially with these bigger eggplants, so about 20 to 30 minutes.
But then you're taking it off, right?
Yeah, and then we're just discarding the skin. So the inside is nice and soft and cooked, and delicious, and it has this beautiful sort of smoky flavor. And then the outside, we're removing. If a little bit of the skin goes in, that's fine. It's not the worst thing. But this is, again, a great way to add a ton of flavor. And you may have seen this almost like a baba ganoush kind of dip. It's used in many different types of cuisines. So sometimes the bigger eggplant tend to be a little more on the bitter side, I find. But when you roast them, I find you lose a lot of that bitterness. It starts to sort of caramelize a little bit. You get more of a sweetness. The bigger ones do have a little bit more of the seeds as well. So if you're not a big fan of the seeds, maybe focus on the smaller eggplant. But yeah, I mean it's all dependent. Yeah, you have the small. Yeah, there's like even the Japanese eggplant, which are really nice as well. These ones I like because for this dish, they're pretty meaty, so you actually get quite a bit of eggplant out of there.
Yeah, and then again, in terms of men's health, so the recommendation for cancer, prostate cancer survivors is at least 8 to 10 servings of combination of vegetables and fruit a day. Okay, so that might seem like a lot, but when you think of a serving of a vegetable, it's about a half a cup of something chopped. Okay, so if my fist is 1 cup, half of it is a half a cup, and that's 1 serving. So it's not, if you had lettuce, or maybe you're having a half a cup of the baba ganoush, right, or the eggplant. So getting your vegetable and fruit servings in is something that you want to make sure that you're getting for sure.
Yeah, and we're removing a lot of it. Like in terms of flavor, the burning does add bitterness. That's what it does. So we're removing the outside. Same if you were to roast peppers, the same thing. You want to remove the outside after. All right, so I can do this in a bowl too. It's so soft I can just probably mash it up with a fork. But I have the equipment, so I'm going to use it. And we're putting it into a food processor, and we are going to add some yogurt as well. This is just some plain yogurt. This is going to give it a nice creaminess in there. Clove of garlic, might as well, it's here. We'll throw that in there. And again, this is where you can sort of get pretty creative, right? A little bit of garlic in there. Half of a lemon, we'll get some lemon juice in here. And we're using this as sort of like a spread, but I've had this in sauces after. You can cook it down even more, make like a nice eggplant curry, or even with pasta, really nice eggplant sauce.
Yeah, or even just a way to dip carrots or
really nice
pepper.
Dip. Yeah, I'm at a tablespoon of olive oil. And a pinch of salt. I don't need too much. Black pepper as well. And you can add dried or fresh herbs. I have mint and parsley here, which I think go really well. The eggplant. And yeah, that's good. And blend it up. And that's it, just until it comes together. We don't want to over puree it and make too fine of a spread, but we like a little bit of that texture in there. And that's pretty much it there. So really, really nice. Lots of flavor, especially if you don't like eggplant. This is a great way to sort of get into it. Beautiful. And this freezes well too, so you can make a little bit extra, put it in a freezer bag, and you can throw it in the freezer. All right, so trying with veg good, and brings us to finishing up the recipe. So we're making a flatbread. You can do a pizza, This is sort of meant to be kind of like a starter or appetizer kind of thing. And
so we're using kind of the whole grain type of flatbread, one that's higher in fiber, another component that you really want to make sure you're getting, right? So the recommendation is at least 30 grams, especially for men, of fiber a day. So, you know, just making sure that when you're looking at a nutrition facts label that there's 5% or more of the daily value of fiber, or 2 grams or more per serving. But, you know, you are finding fiber in a variety of foods like vegetable, fruit, whole grains, nuts, legumes as well. So
yeah,
a good option.
All right, so, and that's tasty just as is. All right, so we have the eggplant puree on there. And then for the flank steak, now flank steak is a little bit of a leaner cut, which is what we did want to choose. It is slightly tougher as well. So you do want to try to avoid overcooking it because it will toughen up quite a bit. The other thing too is it helps to slice it thinly. That's also going to help with the tenderness. The marinating is also going to help as well.
Yeah. And you could use just as easily a chicken breast, a turkey breast on the barbecue as well. You know, again, marinating those different types of animal proteins is what you're aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Firstly.
So the other thing too, when you're cutting, you try to want to cut against the grain. So with flank steak, it's actually pretty easy to see the grain, and it actually runs this way. So I want to slice against that. And that's, again, it's going to make it even more tender. And you can, again, cook this to the doneness that you like. With me, I went a little above 150, so it's just under about medium.
Yeah, and it's just in terms of also, you know, we're obviously showing the preparation, but making sure that you're being food safe, right? So when you are picking up meat in the grocery store, you know, we're not leaving it in the car for a long amount of time. Pick out the perishable foods last, and then bring them home, put them directly in the fridge, avoiding the cross-contamination. Yeah. So, you know, even on the barbecue, making sure that the tongs and plates that you're using for the raw foods is different from those that are cooked.
Cutting board as well.
Yeah.
You'll notice I have different color cutting boards. So I have one that I dedicate to usually meat if I'm carving, and have one for raw, and then one for your cooked as well. Different tongs as well. So you always have one to pick up the cooked product, and then you have one that you're using to put the raw product onto the barbecue. But that's it. That's our steak and eggplant flatbread.
Yeah.